Hey gang, here with you today with Venus Felix from 999 TACMed, and we're here today to talk with Venus a little bit about her experience, not only in the tactical medicine side of things, but her experience professionally as well. So welcome, Venus.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about who you are. If I may start at the beginning, not like kindergarten beginning.
Okay.
But who is Venus Felix, and like say, where'd you grow up, that kind of thing,
Okay.
if you can share, of course.
Well, I grew up in LA.
Okay.
I pretty much lived in the same house until I became a deputy.
Okay.
And then, I grew up and I moved out.
Okay.
But I grew up in the same neighborhood, same house. It was an okay neighborhood, but there were gangs.
Right.
And that's pretty much, I don't want to say all I knew, but I just knew my little neighborhood.
Your bubble.
And my bubble, and
Yeah.
I thought that's how everybody grew up.
Little did she know.
Yeah. The good thing was I had good parents.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is a Vietnam veteran,
Okay. What branch?
Navy.
Okay.
He was a river rat. So
brown water Navy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he pretty much raised us, not strict, but a little bit on the militant side. Every once in a while on the weekends we'd wake up to reveille and stuff like that. But he taught us how to work hard.
Yeah.
And he worked hard after the Navy. He worked for the city, but he also started his own business as an electrician.
Okay.
So he had 2 jobs.
Did he work for the city as an electrician as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then my mom she was a stay-at-home mom, but she was very active with us as far as volunteering at our school, taking care of us. But she also took care of my grandparents who lived across the street.
Oh, so her parents.
Her parents.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a good family structure, especially my grandparents. My grandmother especially played a big role in who I am and
Being around and influence.
Yeah, and it was a blessing to have them across the
course.
street. And if I get in trouble, I just run across the street because they wouldn't yell at me. But
That's usually how it works.
yeah, so I'm the youngest of 3.
Okay.
I went to high school, wasn't the best student, but again, back in those days, in the 90s and 80s and 90s, they didn't have diagnosis for ADHD or anything like that.
They weren't doing that. Either you were a good student, bad student.
Yeah, so I think now, if I could go back, I'd probably get good grades. I did learn. I just didn't want to apply myself as far as doing the work. But
Right.
that part comes back. That'll do a full circle to where I am now.
Gotcha.
But as far as after high school, I went to City College, everything else, and I still kind of was a little lost, like, what do I want to do?
Right.
I don't want to sit behind a desk. I don't want to, I can't do a boring job because, I'm always like, I wanted to do something that would constantly keep me stimulated.
Okay.
So after that, I started taking criminal justice classes.
At the college?
Yeah.
Okay.
My best friend Veta, she was taking criminal justice classes as well at Cal State LA.
Okay.
So she kind of influenced me. I was like, okay, I'll start taking those classes, and I really liked them. They were taught by law enforcement officers. I went to Pasadena, so I had a lot of officers from Pasadena PD, and there was a female. I think she was a lieutenant at the time. She was teaching.
Okay.
And those officers and their stories were awesome. Like, they influenced me. And it was just so easy to learn everything that they taught.
Okay.
And then after that, it was like, okay, now I know where I want to go.
So you just enjoyed, apart from the people that were teaching it, the subject matter really interests you.
Yeah. The subject matter interests me, and it also just they teach you like every day's different. Like you learn like every day's different, but you're also making a difference. And just the way I was raised, and especially my dad, he would always help people. Like if there was a car accident or anything, like we had the 110 freeway behind my house. So anytime we hear a crash, my dad would go and we'd go and, try to help the people or whatever it is. But we're always helping people. And so that's kind of like, I'm like the helper,
Right.
And so that was just, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sign up. I actually applied with LAPD at first, passed the test, and then I got so nervous because I went to like some symposium about the oral interview, and it was a symposium for females about the oral interview, and they were making such a big deal. Don't wear this and don't wear that, and I was like, I don't have pantyhose, What the hell? So I just kind of like, it freaked me out, so I didn't do it.
Right. So you didn't go to the interview?
No, I didn't go to the interview.
Okay.
And then my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he actually joined the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And by that time, my grandparents had passed, and my sister moved across the street into my grandparents' house with my brother-in-law and my niece. And he was going through the academy now. And so I would go over there, and he would have his little study groups. And I would sit with them because what they were studying was exactly what I studied at school.
Right.
And I was like, this is easy. Like,
and
this is what you're studying in the academy. Yeah, they're like struggling to learn it. He's kind of like the one that like, you need to apply for the sheriffs. So I took the test, applied for the sheriffs, and he actually drove me to my interview because he's like, "You're
Did you not want to go?"
I was like, I'm nervous. I told him I was nervous about the interview, so he drove me to the interview. And
it was in the back of a police car?
No. I think he was still in the academy.
Okay.
So he drove me to the interview. I took the interview. I ended up passing all the tests. The polygraph was kind of hard.
Okay.
And I wasn't lying. It was even before I even did the polygraph. It was this lady. I'm just call her a lady. You fill out a questionnaire.
Sure.
And one of the questions was, do you affiliate with gang members and this and that? And she's like, you wrote no. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, I know the neighborhood you live in. She's like, you're telling me you've lived there all your life and you don't affiliate with any of the gang members? You don't know any of them? And I was like, no, I don't. And she's like, that's hard to believe. And I was like, okay, well.
Were you hooked up to the machine at this point?
No. This was before.
Sure. And
she's like so stuck on that question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, lady, I'm telling you, I don't feel you. I know who they are. I've seen them around.
Right.
But my parents would beat the shit out of me if they saw me talking to any of the gang members or if I hung out with them. So I didn't, I stayed away from them.
Right.
As did my brother and my sister.
Right.
We all stayed away from them. I think the three of us are probably the very few of the ones in the neighborhood that actually made something of ourselves or made it out.
Didn't associate.
We're not dead yet.
Right.
Or anything like that. But she said, okay, fine. But she kept telling me, I was like, lady, do you want to call my parents?
Did you say that?
I did.
Good.
I said, if you want, you can call my parents and they'll tell you that, I don't. And then she went down to, you have to list all your tattoos. And I only had a few at the time.
Right.
And, I think it was like the tribal art I had on my back. And she's like, what is this tribal art? And I was like, it's just art. And well, what kind of art? And I was like, I don't know, they call it tribal art. Well, what tribe? And I was like, oh my God, this
Would you like to see it?
Seriously, I was like, I don't know. It's a design that I picked off the wall. Like, I don't know. So that was the other thing. And then by the time she hooked me up to the machines, I was just so nervous that it was inconclusive. So I had to go back. And I got a guy this time, and he was like, well, what happened last time? And I'll be honest with you, the lady kind of scared me. And he was like, all right, just trying to relax. And finally I passed it.
Okay.
And then maybe, I don't know, 6-8 months later, I get the call, and, joining the academy, and that was in 2000. So I started in May of 2000. So
May of 2000.
it was a long time ago.
It was. I mean, 25 years ago at this point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I started the academy. I really didn't have any problem in the academy. I knew that I was going to the academy, so I was preparing as much as possible, physical, just everything I was preparing. And the good thing was that I did have my brother-in-law to help me.
Right.
You know, he had just went through the academy, so.
Fresh in his mind.
Yeah, fresh in his mind. And then, you know, I had my other friend, Ruben, he was Marine, and he actually taught me how to stand at attention and how to march and, you know, do my little turns and everything else. So I was like, all right, I got that straight. You know, he even showed me like what my gig line is. And, you know, so I was like, I was prepared. Good. You know. And,
if I may, looking back at the academy, right? Because here's what I guess is that the academic probably wasn't that hard for you because you had gone to your studies before then. And then you also had help from some folks, right? What would you, if you look back on it, what would have been the toughest part for you about the academy? What thing or whatever, you know, standards or activities, what was the hardest part?
The running.
Okay.
I was never a good runner. And that was the only thing, like they had us running in groups and like, you know, the faster runners were A group, B group. I think I was like D- group. You know, I was a slow runner.
Right.
I never fell out of a run though.
Yeah, you
That
can't.
was the only thing. I fell back. I never fell out of a run. And that was one of the things I fell out at the end of a run, I remember, because it was my birthday. And we were marching in place, and I guess I just fell back. And my friend said my lips were blue, but I didn't quit. I didn't quit, though. Right. You know, I was like, I have to keep going, and it was during the summer, so it was pretty hot. That was the only time I fell out of a run. But I was never a runner. I hate running. I still hate running.
Okay.
But
what would have been? So on the flip though. What would have been like the thing that you excelled at the most?
Oh, you know what I did have trouble with? Well, I'll go back to that. But I think, just the academic part was probably what I excelled at the most. Okay. And just following direction, you know, that was easy. But I do remember I did have trouble shooting.
Oh.
I did. I almost didn't graduate.
Because of the shooting?
Because I didn't qualify in the last final qual, so I didn't get that 210 score, and so I had to go back, and it was like a group of us that had to remediate, and I was the only one that passed out of that group, and
wow,
I had to hold my celebration till I got in the car and drove home. I'm driving home,
right? Because you don't want to celebrate in front of those folks.
I felt bad because they were like some good friends that were you know that were getting disqualified, and we were like days away from graduating the academy.
And so when they disqualify these people, do they roll them to another class, or like they're done?
No, they can get rolled into another class, and then they have to start all over again.
They have to start the academy all over?
They have to start all over again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it kind of sucks for them, but you have to start the academy all over.
That's rough.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So you graduate from the academy. This is again in 2000.
Yes.
Right. And then obviously you're a deputy. So what was the first thing that you did out of the academy? What was your first assignment?
I worked at Men's Central Jail.
I'm sorry, what?
Men's Central Jail.
Okay.
So I got assigned to the men's jail. I think there was four of us of the females got sent to the men's jail, and all the other females got sent to the female jail.
That would make sense.
Yeah, so I think that was a blessing in itself, because I hear horror stories about the female jail, and I'm glad I didn't work there. But I got to work at the men's jail, and that was, I don't want to say it was hard, it was easy. It was literally you're babysitting adults.
Sure.
You know,
but there's a learning part of that.
Oh yeah,
right.
Big time.
What would be coming from the jails, and how much time did you spend in the jails?
8 years.
Wow, 8 years. Okay. That's a little bit more than a minute.
Oh yeah.
But so 8 years in the jail, what would be the thing or things that you learned the most, or that maybe prepared you for the next phase of your deputy career? What would be the greatest takeaway from the jails?
Learning how to talk to people. That was one thing, is just, I think because of my background and where I grew up, it was easy for me to talk to the inmates. It was easy for me to, I guess, relate, but just talk to the inmates. When you learn how to talk to them, they have a certain level of respect. At first I was afraid, because it was like, okay, I'm going to a men's jail and I'm a female.
Right.
Like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
And you learn a lot about command presence. And one big thing that I learned about the males or men is, if you scold them like you're their, like if you're a mom, they actually revert back to being a child. And it's just kind of like, sit down over there and stop talking, and they're just kind of like, okay, yes, ma'am. And I learned that, but I also learned that, I don't walk around scolding people, but just talking to people and gaining their respect is big, and they don't mess with you, and if you have tried to mess with me, and then, things happen, but
right.
They'll get written up or whatever, but for the most part, it was actually not hard to learn. That was one of the big takeaways.
Sure.
Is learning how to talk to people, so that when I'm actually out in the street, it was easier for me.
Yeah. And well, before that, because I think, and I want to ask you, because I don't want to assume, but while you were in the jails for those 8 years, I imagine there were a couple times or so that maybe you were challenged.
Yeah.
And that had to occur. So maybe you could tell a story about how you were challenged in some way, and how did you overcome that?
I think one of the times, it wasn't really a challenge. It was one of those, this could have gone south really fast times, and it was, I was still on training, and we worked in what they're called modules.
Yeah.
So you would walk down a row, and then you'd go out the back door, and you would sign a sheet, and then you walk down up the row that's on the opposite side. And there was a time where we would let them out and kind of like walk freely on the tier.
Yes.
And either use a phone or whatever. And during that time, they were called freeway sleepers. And
Freeway sleepers.
Yeah, they're called freeway sleepers. So think of 2 tiers. And the bottom tier had cells, and then they also had bunks along the outside of the cells, along the walls. Okay. Because of overcrowding.
Sure.
So back then it was, not a big deal. Now you can't do that. But there were inmates just walking freely on the outside, and then above, there were inmates on the outside, and I guess they were out freely. And I would have to walk the tiers, and I would walk past all the inmates.
Yeah, they're like right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I got used to it. It was, all right, this isn't that bad. And one of the times I was walking the upper tier. And so I'm walking, and I walk through the back. And as I'm walking back in, I caught the inmates that were from the bottom tier. They were standing on their bunk communicating with the inmates on the top, but they were all like smoking a joint. And I looked at them, and instead of me like going back and whatever, because obviously I was outnumbered, I stood there, my little tough girl, and I got on the radio and I'm calling for my TO.
Right.
And it's just like, and I'm standing there like a hall monitor. I don't know what I was thinking, because I'm like, dude, this could have gone bad. Like,
your name's going on the board.
Yeah, like they could have pulled me into a cell. They could have done all kinds of stuff to me.
Sure.
But I just stood there, and I'm like, calling for my TO, and they all come. They finally come running, because it wasn't like an emergent call. I just was calling him to the module, but I guess he knew something was up, and a couple other guys came running in. And they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, he's smoking weed, and he's not supposed to be here. And I was just like, oh my God. It was like later on.
Little did you know.
Yeah, and he was just like, what were you thinking? I don't know what I was thinking.
That's all I knew.
Yeah, but yeah, no, there was a lot of stuff that went on during the the jails, and God, there's so many stories. But
I bet. I mean, you could probably sit here for hours about just that.
But a lot of it, the majority of it was just like they're funny stories.
Right.
They're just it's a whole different world, and once they're locked up, especially like the inmates, like once they're locked up, they just want to do their time.
Right.
And a lot of times they're not very violent. I worked with the guys that were pro-pers, the ones that were, what is it called, defending themselves in the jail, they're being their own attorney. And I had one guy hand me an envelope, and it was legal mail, like you're supposed to seal it in front of them and sign it. So I did it, and he's like, he gives it back to me, and he's like, you know what that is? And I was like, no, I don't care. And he's like, it's to the immigration, because I'm going to get you deported. And I was like, all right, cool. Like,
from my own country?
I guess so. But I guess he thought of, I don't know, he's going to get me deported. Yeah. But, yeah, no, there's just that. I've worked with like celebrity inmates, like
there's such a thing?
Suge Knight. Well, yeah. Well, no, but like celebrities, like Suge Knight, he was there, and just different inmates. I worked the high power module, and those were like the highest security, and those are the high profile ones.
Right.
The baby killers and the ones that were on the news. I'm still dealing with them. It's kind of weird. I remember the time this one guy walked in, and I remember seeing it on the news, and he had burned his wife and his child.
Oh wow.
And I just kind of remember, I saw him, and I remember seeing the little boy's picture on the news.
Right.
And I'm like,
rage.
I hate you, but
rage.
go to your cell.
Instant rage.
Yeah, but you can't do anything.
No, you can't.
You deal with rapists and child molesters, and just all kinds of people. And like I've said it, like I think I've seen the devil. I think I've looked the devil in the eye at some of these inmates that have done the most heinous crimes. And it's just like, you know what? It's not my job. It's, God will judge you later on, and you're not going to God anyway. You're going straight to hell, hopefully. But it was different, but I needed to get out, that wasn't my job, wasn't to be an adult babysitter. I needed to work patrol, and
you did.
Yeah.
So after 8 years, you go to patrol, and then how long did you spend in patrol?
Another 8 years.
Okay, another 8 years.
Another 8 years. Yeah, just 8 and 8.
Every chapter, 8 years.
Yeah, nice.
So, would you say, coming from the jails, now that you're on patrol and in the streets, I imagine that some of the folks that you supervised, if we could say that, in the jails, you would now see them on the street.
Not as much, no. I mean, if I did, I wouldn't have recognized them.
Okay.
I didn't really like, it's kind of like you know who your kindergarten teacher is, but that kindergarten teacher probably doesn't know who all their students are throughout the years of them teaching.
Sure.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Where maybe they know you, maybe they don't. I knew that going to patrol in the city that I was patrolling, I got to know the gangsters in the jail that lived in that area.
Yeah.
So I'd bring out a map, and I worked Pico Rivera.
Okay.
So I had like a Pico Rivera map, and I found a gangster, and I was like, all right, tell me the borders of all the gangs. And he did.
This is in the jail.
In the jail.
Yeah.
And so he wrote all the borders of all the gangs, and that's where you pick their brains when you work in the jail. And it's like, okay, cool. And like he was ratting out all the rivals, and he's like, this is where we are, but I'm not going to tell you about that, but I'll tell you about everyone else. And I was like, I'll take it.
Right.
Right. So when you're in the jail, you should already be preparing to go to patrol.
Right.
You should already be preparing and studying, and it's a whole other world. And I think that's where I feel a lot of deputies, they slack off and they stay in the jail for too long.
Yeah.
And it gets too easy, because it literally was an easy job. Like, you go there and, you know, you're responsible for feeding them and, you know, making sure they get their medication, their phone
Right.
time and all of that. It's not
Right.
hard.
You're babysitting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all you are.
you're babysitting adults. So going out to patrol is a whole other different world.
Right. It's because it's an uncontrolled environment.
Very.
And it's dynamic.
Yes.
So, is there anything in regards to patrol that you want to share as far as maybe high or low?
There was a lot that I've experienced out on patrol. I've been in 3 shootings. In those 3 shootings, it was one year after year. So the 3 consecutive years, you know, it happened. And those 3 shootings, it kind of, it opens to your eyes to like PTSD and how your body works, how your body reacts. Just all those different things, and what are you going to do to survive?
Right.
Like, just mentally. And, you know, I think for whatever reason, I think these things happened, but now I'm in a position where I'm at now,
Right.
where I can help people and I can, you know, kind of guide them maybe.
Because after your 8 years in patrol, are you now in the 3rd phase? You're in training now.
I work at Training Bureau.
And that you come from patrol to training.
So
Okay.
it's a whole other unit.
Right.
So that's Training Bureau, and the unit that I work is Advanced Officer Training.
Okay.
So it's not the academy, it's not with recruits, it's more working with the people that are already in law enforcement,
Right.
that are deputies and
For however many years and
Yeah.
stuff. Now, and how long have you been in that division?
since 2016.
Okay, so we're 9 years,
Yeah.
right? And what's your focus in the training division particularly? Like, what is it that you specialize in?
So when I got there, you know, I didn't really have a job, and then the deputy that was in charge of the first aid program, we started talking, and I was like, I'll help you, because I actually, when I was going to school prior to being a deputy, I actually went through EMT school.
So you're an EMT as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So I went through EMT school. I didn't take the test or anything. I had gotten hired.
Got it.
So I had gotten hired onto the department, so I didn't.
You did all the schooling, but
I
you
did
didn't
all
get
the schooling.
The license.
No,
Right.
because I had gotten hired.
Right. No,
And
I
was like,
understand.
okay,
Yeah, for
do
sure.
I take a minimum wage job, or do I get a real job?
Right.
But I give a lot of respect to EMTs, though.
Yeah.
They do a
It's
lot
a
of hard
different
work.
ball game.
Yeah.
A different ball game.
So talking to him,
Yep.
he was like, "Oh, you can help me with first aid," and I'll be like, "Cool." And then my unit ended up sending me to EM2 school again. So this time, you know, I went to EMT school again, and all the stuff that I learned, you know, what was it now, 16 years before,
Change.
is everything's perishable too.
Yeah.
If you're not using it, you're gonna lose it.
Yeah.
And so everything changed, and so it was like learning all over again. And it had been 16 years since I've been in school, so I did a 5-week accelerated program,
Okay.
and that in itself was hard, because I had to learn how to be a student again, and I had to learn, how do I study again? Like, I forgot how to study, and
Yeah.
I still have my EMT books like this big, and it's full of highlights, and, you know, just notes like crazy. But it was stressful. But those 5 weeks were stressful. I didn't have a life. I didn't do anything but
I imagine.
study, because every day you were taking a test, and if you didn't pass, your 3rd test, you were done,
Right. It's like 3 strikes.
pretty much.
Right.
And I had failed twice already.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, a lot of people failed, but
Yeah.
I'm the worst test taker ever. I hate taking tests, because I'm the type that goes back and changes my answers, and I doubt myself, but I am horrible at taking tests. But I did learn a lot, and I ended up passing, ended up getting my EMT and everything else. And then when I got back to the unit, the partner that was in charge said, "Hey, guess what? I'm promoting to detective, so now this is yours."
Oh, here you go.
So
Did he plan that?
I think he did. I'm still bitter with him, but it's fine. So that part, I took over, and my job there was to teach the 40-hour instructor course.
Okay.
So the 40-hour instructor course. So every pretty much post requires every law enforcement in the state of California to take a 8-hour first aid CPR refresher course every 2 years.
Right.
So what I do is my job is to create instructors to teach that 8-hour course. Mm-hmm. So I would get people from my agency, but I would also get people from officers from other agencies throughout the state of California, because not a lot of departments offer that class, but every department needs a first aid CPR instructor. Mm-hmm. So it's cool because, I would get people from everywhere, from little small towns in California that I've never heard of.
Right. It's like, you're in California?
Yeah. So, was it Sonoma?
Yeah.
I'd get like Carlsbad, Oceanside, and then like here, like Fullerton, I don't know, I think I got some Fullerton officers. Mm-hmm. Redondo Beach, Long Beach. So all these smaller agencies surrounding, they would all come to my class, and it was cool because I wouldn't let them sit with each other. I'd mix up the class. Good. And then I was like, no, now you got to make friends.
Right.
So teaching that class over and over it's pretty cool because you're getting refreshed every time you teach it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of my collaborations is that. And then the other one is teaching like the students going out to patrol. Mm-hmm. So, they're leaving the jails, they're going to patrol, but they have to go through a 3-week patrol refresher course. Right. So teaching them how to go, teaching them first aid, kind of just refreshing them. Not really the whole 8-hour course, but just what to expect as a first responder and what your duties are as a first responder now. Because in LA County, if there's an incident like a heart attack or a drowning or baby not breathing or anything like that, anything that requires CPR, they will dispatch deputies because we're out and about. Takes a few minutes for fire department to, put their phone down or stop watching TV or making pancakes.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
It's true though. But it takes time for them to put their shirt on and get in their car. I always say that. Get in their fire truck or the paramedic truck or whatever and get to the call. But we're patrolling and hopefully our deputies will get to that location prior and do whatever needs to be done as far as like basic first aid, but for the most part CPR.
Right.
So they get trained to do that. And the other thing that we do is we issue them IFAC kits. Okay. So IFAC, like the individual first aid kit. Right. Yeah. So we issue them their tourniquet. We issue them their IFAC kit that has chest seals, pressure bandage, a hemostatic dressing, just things like that, things that they need in the case that they get shot or, their partner or someone else, like civilians, are hurt. So I'm teaching them how to use all of that stuff. It's kind of eye-opening too, because the first thing I do with them, they show up and they have like their gun belt and all their, happy gear on and everything else, and they're good to go. They have their tourniquets on their belts. And the first thing I do when I see them is I'll kind of like look at their gun belts and I'll see, okay, their tourniquet's in the wrong place. And that's my pet peeve is your tourniquet's in the back. It's like, tell me, you got till tomorrow to fix that. But also I've gotten so good at identifying counterfeit tourniquets, especially the cat tourniquets. Yeah. Like that's counterfeit.
That's bogus.
How much you pay the $13 on Amazon for this, right? Yeah. So I have a collection of those. But when I teach them, I have them, okay, guys, those of you that have your tourniquets, go ahead and just put your tourniquet on your arm. No rush, just do it. And you see them struggling, and you see them like biting their tourniquet and, just doing wrong, and just kind of watching them. And I just be patient and watch them and ask them, it's like, how many of you guys were confident in what you were, that you put your tourniquet on right after 3 minutes?
Hey, by the way, you're bleeding out. While
Yeah,
this is happening.
you're dead, but how many of you are confident?
Right.
And, a few cocky ones will raise their hand, and then I'll be like, how many of you guys don't know what the hell you're doing or know that you need to practice? And the humble, honest ones will raise their hands, and I pretty much tell them, that's how maybe 99% of you guys need help.
Right.
But good thing is we're going to learn how to do it properly, and we're going to keep practicing. So we issue them trainer tourniquets because we don't want them to use their own. And we just start at the beginning, step by step, and teach them how to put tourniquets on. And then we move on to what's in their kit. Prior to that, we do kind of a lecture, pretty much explaining to them, like, what's it called? Like, your tactical awareness, your situational awareness. I'm sorry. Yeah. Care under fire. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So explaining them what care under fire is, explaining to them, what needs to be done if you are getting shot at, what, communication is a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Your tactical awareness, difference between cover and concealment. We talk about, what can you do? Like, what are the things that you can do? Like, if you're in what's called a hot zone, maybe you can get behind cover and put a tourniquet on really quick. We talk about that. We talk about the importance of having that tourniquet on their belt. We just have them practice. We have them, okay, you got the feel of it. All right, now, like this last class, I drew like little bad guy on the board. And I was like, that's your bad guy, or that's the direction of your bad guy running away. But, put your tourniquet on. I don't want you looking down, and then put them in different predicaments.
Right.
And then we start stepping it up. And now we're going to do it with the lights off. Now we're going to do it laying down. Now we're going to do it where this time.
Compromised position.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to do it now where now you're getting, you're putting your tourniquet on, you're getting behind cover, but now you're getting your gun out and you're putting out radio traffic.
Right.
So we go step by step. So we don't just throw it all at them. We teach them step by step. Do this, this, and this. And now let's do it all together.
Right.
And now let's take you guys outside, we'll partner them up. All right, don't forget who your partner is. I'll take one group to the other side, and, my partners will have the other group, hey guys, find a spot, you're injured, this is your injury, whatever it is. And I'll have the other group, and I'll have the other group doing push-ups, burpees, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'll have them sprint to one side, and then as they're running back, I tell them, this is your call, this is what's going on. And usually, because it's at our facility, I tell them that they were doing a check on an alarm that went off, and they encountered a bad guy, and radio traffic, 998, I've been shot and this and that. So then they have to go and they have to find their partner. They have to do everything that we pretty much laid out for them during the class. Finding the wounds, knowing how to identify the wounds, lifting them, carrying them, putting out radio traffic, all of that stuff. But we're doing that, stress inoculated exercises, pretty much.
Right, and that's partly what the burpees and the sprints and the whatever's for.
You want to get their heart rate going, and you
right.
want them to be able to work under pressure. And there's times where, like, deputies that are acting as victim are, I tell them, I was like, you need to fight them. Like, they're putting a tourniquet on, and you know what? You don't like how that tourniquet feels. Like, take it off. Or we talk about how, losing a lot of blood, you start losing your mental, your mental focus and everything else. You're not there all the way.
Yeah, your marbles aren't all there.
Yeah, you're, God, I can't think of the word, but you're not thinking straight. And sometimes they might go for their own firearm, and so now we have to think, do we disarm our partner? Absolutely.
If you have to.
Yeah. You don't want that partner to hurt you or hurt anyone else, and having weapons on them is not going to be a good idea.
Right.
The last few days we do, it's patrol school. Well, not patrol school, I'm sorry. We call it 10-8 City. It's like they're pretty much the day before they get the blessing to leave, and they go through all their exercises, and they have different exercises. They have like a domestic violence scenario. They have like a 5150 scenario. They have all these different scenarios, but the one scenario that I work is a deputy down scenario. And my partner, Martin, he exercises them. He does that. It's outside of a big building. He exercises them, has them run back and forth. They come inside and they encounter a threat. And they actually have to physically fight that threat. And then after they physically fight that threat, and it's a good fight, they encounter my deputy down, and I have a role player who's actually a live role player, and I put them in a uniform and a vest and everything, and
simulated all the things,
blood and all.
Yep.
And now they see that and they're like, holy shit, it's like, help your partner
figure it out.
Yeah, like help your partner. And the one thing that they do is, partner, where you shot, and I was like, find it. Don't ask them, find it.
Yeah.
Because
he probably can't tell you all the way.
He can't tell. He might be unconscious.
Right.
Or he doesn't know. Adrenaline is doing something. Yeah.
Yep.
So they go through the whole, we call it raking. We have them take off their vest. We have them raking a chest. And I don't, just for modesty reasons, I bought like these chest t-shirts from Amazon. So it's a chest. It's like a printed chest on the t-shirt. So we tell them that's your chest. And I actually made gunshot wounds on those chests that they actually can feel.
Got it.
So they rake the chest. They'll find the hole, like what goes there, and sometimes they freeze, and they're just kind of like, and instead of yelling at them, because I think yelling, well, this incident, it just kind of, it's going to make noise.
They're going to probably tune you out.
I kind of go, what goes on the chest, the chest seal, all right. And I give them trainer IFX. So they have it on their belt. So they go and they apply the chest seal, and then I'm like, are you done? And sometimes they'll freeze, and sometimes they'll, look somewhere else. And it's key words. Like, if you have a hole in the front, means what?
There's probably a hole in the back.
Exactly what they say. A hole in the back, and you see the little light bulb turn on over their head, and it's like, yes, you got it. They go to the back, they do the raking, they find it. They put the tourniquet on the role player. They do, and I'm there with a squirt gun too. I'm also squirting blood at them. So, I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
It's so fun. But I have the wound packing. So the wound packing that actually squirts out blood. So I have a wound packing. So we do like junctional wounds.
Right.
And like I'll make an injury like up in their shoulder or anything like that. And I go, well, a tourniquet can't go there. What do you think is going to go there? Oh, wound packing. So they'll bring out their gauze, and then I'll introduce the wound and push more blood through, and now they're just fighting this gushing wound, and it gets them to do stuff. But when you have them exercise, you have them in a physical fight.
Yep.
And now they have to think. It's a lot.
It is.
But it's an eye opener for them, and you guide them through that. And I feel like if you experience that tunnel vision, and you reflect on it, it's hard for you to experience again. Like it's less likely for you to experience it again. So hopefully, if they did get tunnel vision, we're able to break that for them there. And then if it does happen out in the street, they're able to function, and they'll reflect on all the things that they've done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So We do that. They lift them up, put them in a patrol car. They do all of that stuff while doing radio traffic. We have another deputy acting as a dispatcher.
Right.
They have to go through all the steps.
That's a lot of experience in the medical field. But is that the reason? So, because I want to talk about your company, 999.
Yeah.
Is given all the experience and even what you just shared.
Yeah.
Is that why you started 999?
I started it. I started it because these are skills that shouldn't just be for law enforcement or first responders. These are skills that need to be taught to the community.
Sure.
Because if there is, say, an active shooter or some kind of a situation, someone can bleed out really quickly.
Before cops get there, before firefighters get there.
Before anything. And we're trained, when we go into an active shooter situation, we're trained to go after that threat.
Sure.
We're trained to go after the one that's creating these casualties.
Right.
So we have to stop that before we can treat everyone else.
Right.
We're not being mean or anything. We need to stop that person.
Right.
And get them, eliminate them, I guess. And then we can go and we can help other people. And that's everywhere. If it's a school, small children, everything, you want to be able to help other people. So I think teaching this to civilians in any, I guess in any kind of profession is key. Like if you work at an amusement park, if you work at a bank, if you work as a teacher, you work at the supermarket, if you think about all the incidents where there's been,
bad things,
a violent circumstance. There was that shooting at Trader Joe's.
Yeah. Things happen at a grocery store.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I think civilians need to be trained. I started teaching. It's funny that I started teaching, like my family members. My niece and my nephew, they went to college, and they both went away to college up north. And then, a lot of school shootings at colleges happen. So I'm like, well, I can't be there because you're, 8 hours away.
Right, you're far away.
But I can teach you what you can carry in your backpack.
Right.
So, I had a little class for them and gave them their own little tourniquets and kits and we hopefully you don't need them, but now you know how to use them.
Right.
I remember one day, my best friend, again, she was having a birthday party. I think it was a birthday party. I don't know. She always has big Mexican parties. They were having a party.
What are we celebrating?
Right.
Doesn't matter.
There's food. I go for the food.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so we were there, we're sitting around, and the moms were all talking. And there had just been a school shooting. And they were talking about it, and I think I was talking to someone else, and then I heard my best friend saying, oh, she teaches that stuff. She teaches all that stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, they're talking about school shootings and how, like, the medical stuff, like, you teach that stuff. And I was like, yeah, I teach it to deputies. And one of the moms is like, well, can you teach it to my kids? And I was like, kids, deputies, I think I can.
They're one and the same.
First of all, when you teach, especially law enforcement, you want to make it as simple as possible.
Sure.
You want to keep their attention. You can't use big medical terms or anything, and make it so that they understand it. And I have like a term that I use. How can I teach it to make it stick? So I always how do I figure that out? Remember how I was talking about being a bad student? Mm-hmm. I put myself in that bad student chair and I go, how do I teach my worst student?
Right.
And how do I make it stick to that bad student?
Right.
Or not that bad student. I don't want to say I was a bad student. The hard to learn or hard to teach student.
Right.
So it's like, how do you make it stick? So I was like, I think I can do it. And I went to my truck, and I think everyone who's has learned first aid or anything like that, or in that profession, they got all kinds of gear in their car. So I grabbed all my tourniquets from all my little cubby holes in my car and everything. And I had enough. So I went and I told them, I'll teach your kids, but I don't want any parents in here. So while I was grabbing my stuff, I was coming up with the game plan. So I always do it. I always come up with the game plan prior to teaching anything. And so my game plan was teach them. I'm going to teach them, but I don't want the parents in there.
Right.
And I want these kids to feel comfortable enough to talk to me. So before teaching them anything, I sat down with them and we just had an open discussion about school shootings. And I think there was about maybe six of them.
Yeah.
And they ranged from junior high to high school.
Okay.
And, you know, I explained to them, okay, you guys saw what happened on the news, this and that. I explained to them what happens when the police show up, you know, and I know you guys are, you guys were raised to know that the police are here to help you, but they need to get the bad guy first.
Right.
You know, and we just talked about it. And then I explained to them, I was like, okay, I had to explain to them how the body works, you know, and how, you know, what happens when you bleed out, things like that. And I had to explain to them so that they're not terrified, but that they understand.
Right.
And so you just relate it to things that they understand. So like water hoses, your blood runs through like a water hose. Yeah. And you kink the hose. So that's all we're doing. We're just kinking hoses. So, you know, explaining that to them and that they got it. So then it's like, all right, let's try to put on these tourniquets. And they were putting on the tourniquets and they're putting them on super tight. And I was like, they're going to be scared, they're going to cry. But nah, they were wrenching those suckers on. And they were like, it was cool. And they were like, all right. They're like, but what if we don't have these? And so I was like, shoot. So it was my best friend's house, my goddaughter Sophia and her brother Emilio. And I told them, I was like, go to your room and get your backpack. Don't put anything in there. Don't take anything out. Just go get your backpack. So we actually got the backpack and I started taking things out of the backpack and I was teaching them how to make improvised tourniquets.
Sure.
So then, you know, after that little lesson was done, first of all, the kids all went to their moms and asked their moms to buy them tourniquets. So the moms are buying tourniquets, showing them online where to buy them, not the counterfeit ones.
Right.
So the moms, they all bought them tourniquets, but they were also bringing me stuff while I was sitting there. And they're like, could this be a tourniquet? Could this be a tourniquet? And so it was cool. Like these kids understood. And still, like years later, like, you know, I see them and they're like, oh, I remember you taught me, and it sticks to them.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it gives me peace of mind to know, you know, okay, these kids, hopefully they don't have to use it, but if they do, it's there.
Right.
And they have that knowledge and they know how to jump in and help. Mm-hmm. So.
And is that kind of back then, is that what launched or motivated you to launch?
It started motivating me.
Yeah.
And I still like felt like, you know, I'm just teaching my family. You know, I'm just going to teach my family. But then I was like, just more and more things were happening. You know, the Route 91 incident happened.
Oh yeah.
And it's like that in itself is a big eye opener. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and I remember like my mom asking me like, well, what do you feel about that? Or, you know, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I wish I was there. And she's like, don't say that. And I was like, no. It's like, I know what to do. Like there are people there that knew what to do. A lot of them were first responders. Mm-hmm. They jumped into action.
Right.
But say, you know, more people there just had that knowledge.
More people could have been
saved. They
saved.
could have jumped into
Right.
action and saved more people.
Correct.
And it's just, to me, it's like anyone can do this. Anyone can learn. Mm. And, you know, I taught my parents not too long ago. I had a class and my parents were in my class. And, you know, my mom was kind of looking at me every time I'd say a bad word or something. But, you know, it was cool to see, you know, my parents are in their 70s mm-hmm. and they're doing it. Good. You know, and so it's actually the flyer or the Instagram post that we have right mm-hmm. now for our class. It's actually my nephew and my dad and my mom my dad's putting the tourniquet on my nephew.
Ah, okay.
And so it was that class, and it's just like, hey, Dad, it's not Vietnam, but it was.
You
cool.
will like this tourniquet.
Play a helicopter in the background. No, I don't need him to have a flashback. It's the last thing. But...
Have like a strobe light.
Yeah.
And like smoke with bad smell.
Oh God.
He would love it.
It'll go one or two ways.
Right.
One or two ways. Yeah, but yeah, no. Going back to like the concert and everything else, it's just like things are just getting worse and worse.
They are.
And so I feel like, the community needs to know this.
Absolutely.
Our students need to know this.
100%.
And like you teach the 2A community.
I do.
If you're carrying, then you should be carrying a tourniquet.
100%.
If you're carrying, you should know how to be able to identify bleeds, injuries to the chest, whatever gunshot injuries there are, because either you're the victim or someone else is a victim.
Oh yeah.
Do you know how to treat yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like people don't, I guess, realize or think about that. Sure, let's just say you're a CCW person or whatever. Mm-hmm. The chances of you administering first aid are far more likely than the chances of you having to pull out that firearm and defend yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I've seen it. Mm-hmm. I have seen it firsthand, where first aid was used and gun not used, right? But yeah, it's. I think I agree with you that all folks in all walks of life should really take an interest, or even if you're a parent.
Oh,
right?
Especially parents.
Right, especially. But if you're a parent,
parents.
You should know first aid and how to help your own kids. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw this video happen a few years ago where, I'm sure there's many examples of this, where this child, like I think it was like a toddler or infant, was choking in a restaurant.
Oh. Okay.
And the mom, like freaking out, didn't know what to do. Dad didn't know what to do, and it took a third-party first responder to come in and help out. But like, how helpless do you feel as the parent in that moment that you can't help your own child? And I think no parent ever wants to feel that way or should feel that way. So, but yeah, if you're a parent, learn first aid.
Yeah, and I think it's also a natural reaction for a parent to freak out.
Oh yeah,
but
because it's your kid.
You need to snap out of it and you need to save them.
Absolutely.
But I think the more and more you train, the more you'll get better at it. The other thing is, I see these guys, they buy these $500 med kits, and they have their med kits on their belts and stuff, and it's like, it's cool, you have it. I'm grateful that you have it, but do you know how to use it?
Right.
Each part of that kit goes to a specific part of the body.
Sure.
And if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know how to identify that injury, if you don't know how to apply it, it's trash. That's like having a gun and not knowing how to pull the trigger.
Exactly. I was thinking that the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like having a firearm and not knowing how to use it.
Yeah, you don't know how to use it. Yeah, oh cool, I have a gun.
Yeah. You're just somebody else's holster.
It's just supposed to snap into our brain that, oh, this is how you use it. Once you open it, the little man's going to tell you how. It's like an AED. An AED tells you how to use it.
Charging.
Yeah, the IFAC isn't going to tell you, what goes where.
Yeah.
And it's those things right there. You can't look up a TikTok or a Google or YouTube video on how to use it at that moment because they're going to die.
Right. You have seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't know it, it's not going to work.
You have the very expensive, useless equipment, piece of equipment. That's pretty much what it is.
So you, and how long have you had, or how long have you been doing, I suppose, 999? Like, how long have you had that company?
I've had it for, I started in 23.
Okay. And
doing small classes here and there, but also just putting everything together. Website, my logo, swag, I don't know, whatever you call it, but getting equipment,
Yep.
because there's a lot of training equipment that comes in.
And it's not cheap.
It is not cheap at all. Learning the ins and out of running a business it's probably the most intimidating thing I've ever had to do.
It is a full contact sport.
Yeah, I don't know half of what I'm supposed to know. Like, it's just like, I sometimes I just come to like this blockage because it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know how to teach it.
Yeah.
I can teach this with my eyes closed. I can teach this, but the business part is the scary part.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have a lot of friends who have businesses and who have helped me along the way, and to help me get everything together, and learning how to get my sales license and my this license and that license and insurance and just like all kinds of stuff. It's just like, holy moly.
It's
a lot.
It's a crash course in adulting.
Yeah, it is. It's just like, just come to my class. No, you have to do this and this and this first, you know? And it's just, I know it's going to be an uphill battle for a while. Yeah. And then hopefully things will get a lot easier. And it's like with everything that you learn, it's hard in the beginning. Once you get the hang of it,
it gets better.
It'll get better.
Yeah, I think it's a balance between, sometimes certain things get easier, certain things do not. It's just that you get better.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're easier.
No,
you just get better.
We learn by our mistakes.
Of course.
Always learn by our mistakes, and just, hopefully it's not an expensive mistake, but you learn by your mistakes.
There are those.
Yeah.
There are those.
Yeah. But still, it's a fun ride. I've met a lot of cool people. Knowing that you're teaching them such a valuable skill. Right. You're teaching them something that is hopefully, if needed, going to save somebody's life. Right. I call it a gift. This is the gift, this gift of knowledge of being able to save someone's life. And, I think it should be shared throughout. It should be like, you go to the DMV, get your driver's license, put a tourniquet on too, something like that,
Venus likes her tourniquets.
I do. I am like a tourniquet queen.
If I may, so let's just say we fast forward. You've had 999 for a couple years, right? Let's just say we're to fast forward 3 years from now. You've had 999 for, at that point, 5 years. Where do you envision 999 being? Like, what does it look like? Like, what's your vision at that point?
Oh my goodness! In a dream.
Yeah, like what?
Like a scenario.
What's your I
would love
big
to
goal?
have. I would love to have my own training facility.
Okay.
I would love to have more, incorporate more, like, maybe do classes that involve firearms and firearms and TAC Med. Okay. Because again, those two go hand in hand, I believe. I also would love to have more involvement with, again, high school kids, people in education. I think that's where like the big threat is.
Oh yeah. It's a big gap.
Yeah. And then I'd love to teach businesses as well, like big businesses, big places that might be a threat, or just, just have everybody, have that knowledge.
There's a lot of opportunity in all those spaces.
Yeah, it's big, and it's just, I don't know. You just teach as much as possible. Right. And hopefully, like, God forbid, find out one day that what I taught them was actually used. And I hear it all the time in law enforcement, like my patrol school students and stuff. I see them again, they're like, hey, I put a tourniquet on a guy who, was in a motorcycle accident, or a guy got shot, and this and that. And they, I remember what you told me, and it's kind of like, it feels good, because it's like, okay, cool, you paid attention. I'm grateful that you paid attention. Right.
It's at the same time, that's, dare I say, validation or reassurance that the thing or things that you taught these deputies or law enforcement officers made the difference between somebody making it or not making it, right? And I'm only assuming, but when you hear that, that's just really satisfying. Yeah. Because you're like, wow, the stuff that I do has impact and matters, right? Which I think is great. So especially, and I think we were talking about this before, there was a high-profile incident where one of the deputies did the things that you taught them to do, and it really made the difference between life or death.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's your stuff, your work has impact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something to be proud of.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little
No,
bit.
it is. It is. And yeah, it is. It is something that I do feel proud of, and I do feel proud of as an instructor. You know, being that bad student or that ADHD type of student actually helped me understand how people learn. Or understand how to teach things to make it simple and to make it stick, you know. And you know, when we're us as instructors, we go through instructor courses, and so we learn different things. Like, okay, is this person a visual learner? Is this person an audio learner? Tactile? You know, what kind of learning is it? And when I teach my classes, it's just like I incorporate everything.
Yes.
You know, and try to reach to everyone, just to get it, you know, and especially my patrol school students, I don't want them to leave without knowing this stuff,
right?
You know, because this is so that they survive, you know, not only the community, but them. Right. I lost too many people already for, you know, to bad people. And, you know, whenever we hear that, you know, any law enforcement officer suffered a fatal injury, it's just, it breaks your heart. I just don't want that to happen to any of my students.
No, I mean, we don't want that to happen to anybody.
Yeah,
you know?
no, yeah. So it just kind of, you know, that just in itself makes me work harder.
Yeah.
You know,
that's your motivation.
That is my motivation.
Yeah,
and I will torture you and make you put tourniquets on and make your hands go numb. But you know,
you're gonna thank me later.
I tell them it's because I love you. I love you, and this is why you do it.
Love hurts.
Yes, you're going home. I don't care. You know, and that's all that matters. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, is there anything else that you would like to share with us today before we adjourn?
I think just get training. Be trained. This world is, I don't want to say it's an ugly place, but there are some ugly people in this world.
There's a lot of ugly people
and
doing ugly things.
There's a lot of evil in this world, and now it's not a certain targeted place. It can be anywhere. And you can just be there. Yeah,
wrong place, wrong time.
And it doesn't affect the poor or, you know, it doesn't happen in just, you know, different neighborhoods. It happens everywhere.
Yes. We hear this all the time. You hear this all the time. It's like, especially being near Orange County and things like that. Irvine, the safest city in America. No. Well, guess what? Irvine has bad things happen too.
Yeah, like you have Disneyland. I'm like waiting. I'm not waiting, but I'm hoping nothing ever happens there. But that's a big target in itself. Yeah. You know, you have all these amusement parks, a lot of places where there's just a lot of people. Just Southern California is a place where there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of
people. And if someone wants to do bad, you know, there's so many options, you know. Yeah. You just have to be ready. Yeah, you just have to be ready for it. Even church. You can't even go to church anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go to church anymore. I remember when that Batman movie came out, the movie theater in Colorado.
2012.
And where I worked, the movie theater in that city hired us to work pretty much in the projection room. And I watched Batman like 10 different times. I don't know how many times I watched it. But
you're like, I don't want to ever see this movie again.
I had to watch over the crowd.
Yeah.
And I've never watched people watch a movie, but you see how vulnerable they are.
They are.
And it's like, oh, I don't want to go to the movies anymore, you know? But it's just, you see how vulnerable they are. And it's like now when we go to the movies, we sit in the back, you know? So at least I'm back here and I can watching. Now movie theaters back then, you know, you could walk in through the back, but now you have to walk in through the front.
Right.
You're still a target, but you're just further back, and
Right.
hopefully we're able to.
Well, I mean, movie theaters, you go there, you're there to relax. You have your popcorn, your soda.
And you're so involved in the movie.
You're just hanging out in the movie. Like your situational awareness is nothing.
And even like, you know, when you're in a movie theater and you hear like gunshots and stuff from the next theater, it's like, you don't know if that's actual gunshots or not. You're like, what is that?
Exactly.
You know? So it's a scary world, but if I can help make it, you know, a little bit better by teaching this and giving people that confidence, you know, okay, if something does happen, we're going to be okay because I know how to do this.
Yeah.
Then, you know, that'll be it. You know, hopefully that will, you know, keep them from not staying at home. You know, go home, go out,
right.
Enjoy your life,
right.
But be prepared,
right,
and carry the right equipment with you,
and know how to use it.
And know how to use that equipment. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for jumping on with me today and sharing your story, your experience. I mean, I didn't know, but a vast amount of experience under your belt there, right? In all facets. And it's really cool to see you or somebody like you in the community taking that experience and packaging it in a way that you can broach the civilian world, because guess what? Not many, or really very few, civilians get that perspective or knowledge that you got delivered to them.
Yeah.
And that's really, really cool. So I'm grateful for that, grateful for what you do. And I know what you do has impact.
Thank you.
So really awesome. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions.
So, all right, gang. Well, that's Venus Felix from 999. She was kind enough to share her story today. Check out her website. Check out her training. If you're in need or want a first aid style training for you or your family and business or things like that, really tap into her experience. She brings a lot to the table. So check out her information and see if she can help you out.